Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, wow. Oh, that's better. Yeah. I was like, wow. Can everybody hear? Okay, the microphone's working perfect. Awesome. So, welcome to our session. For those that don't know us, I'm Allie, this is Ange. We're both based in Australia and neither of us are Australian. Which is not uncommon. When we were thinking of designing this session, we wanted to come up with a catchy title, and we thought that maybe, for obvious reasons, we might call it Trust, the long and short of it.
Right. All right, guys. We're waking up. We're waking up.
Warm you up. So I'm going to hand over to Ange, who's going to do a quick intro, and then I'll intro and take us into the first section of the session.
Yeah, great. Just the next slide. Thanks, Allie.
And that is doing that.
So great to see a lot of familiar faces here. Great to see lots of new faces. So love to introduce yourself after the session and love to meet and connect further. For those of you who don't know me, I've been part of this amazing community since 2019, and amongst my many various roles within the community, my daytime job is actually working for a company called Development Beyond Learning, which is a learning and development provider. We specialize and we really focus on helping employees transition into the world of work. So we do a lot of work specializing in graduates, interns, and really thinking about the next generation coming into the workplace. So a really passionate area for me. And recently I've undertaken a very big, significant organizational restructure project within the organization that consisted of moving an entire leadership team, centralizing it into the other side of the world in one location. It included my role as CEO to get re-recruited. I recruited my replacement and I'm now on the exec board of directors. And we also restructured the organisation to set it up for success and then build new management team levels coming into it. The reason I'm sharing all of this is in order for all of that to happen, trust was a significant piece of that component. Trust coming from myself with the founder of the business, pretty scary and daunting to put your hand up and say, give me a roll up the board and I'll step out of the CEO capacity. Trust coming through the organisation all the way across globally, all our regions in UK, Asia and Australia. And then, of course, the trust that I had amongst the leadership team as well. So Allie and I will share a bit more about that as we move through this journey with you today, but just wanted to share that. Allie.
Thank you. So those of you who don't know me, I'm a CF within the LEAD community. I'm also a LEAD alum. I graduated in 2017, so 8 years ago almost. And I also was on the Me2We committee for 2019. Outside of LEAD, I have my own coaching and consulting practice, having worked for decades in the field of organisational development, where a lot of the work that I have done has involved large-scale transformation within organisations that's involved, new leadership teams, complete culture change, all of those aspects of organisational development that require a lot of trust to be central to the success of the change. So why are we talking about this subject? This is something that we're both very passionate about, and it's been so critical to what we do in our work, not just within the LEAD community, but also outside of the LEAD community in our careers. And we're seeing, we call it a trust crisis, but that's what the world is calling it right now. The World Economic Forum is acknowledging the issue of trust around the world, and it was the topic of their agenda for 2024. So their theme was rebuilding trust. So for us, that's what's driving us to actually talk about this. But we can't change the issues, the broader issues of trust in the world. We can only contribute to what we can control locally. And we're going to focus a little bit on that. So our goal is really to help accelerate a positive shift in our workplaces to make our workplaces more meaningful, more engaging, more sustainable, more satisfying. And that's what we're focusing on today. Let's just move that one forward. So first of all, I really want to open this up to the group and have you have a reflection on what trust means to you within your organizations. And what we want you to do is talk to the person next to you and have a conversation about what are the signals that you might be seeing within your organization that indicate there might be an issue with trust? Like, what would you see changing? What behaviors might you see increase or decrease? What signs might you see that there's a trust issue? We'll give you just a minute or so to have a chat with the person next to you, and then we'll hear a bit.
I would say.
Okay, let's try and draw that conversation to a close a little bit. Get your attention. Thank you. Hello. Clearly a subject of passion. Yeah, thank you. Okay, not too bad. I like your little joke. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
To share some of what are the signals that you were seeing? Over here. Sorry, what's your name? Aaron.
Yeah, I would say like when a leader gets into micromanaging things, the projects, tries to get double click on details, all of a sudden shows change in the behavior.
Yeah,
Not
great.
something they used to behave in past, but all of a sudden they should change in behavior, micromanaging projects and all.
Yeah, it's a
lot of
really
signals.
good, yeah, really good signal of trust when people starting to like try and take control of a situation. Yeah, great. Thank you. Over here, sorry.
So just building on that, because that's the exact topic we discussed.
Yeah.
So the signals that we assumed you may see is either everyone's like fighting for credit and like really trying to overprove their worth, or like the teams you might see a signal where everyone's like not really sharing much at all because they have a fear of being critiqued at the end of the day.
Yeah, Sophia is a really good one there, actually. I'm seeing and then we had some hands raised over here. I'll go over here first and then I'll come back to you.
Another thing like probably encouraging to take more trainings, courses, so that they think that these are the areas where lack is there and they can develop some knowledge there.
Yeah, okay.
The early signals for trust.
Right, okay, that's interesting. That's a really interesting insight. That's people saying they're worried about something, so they're trying to prepare themselves for a future. Yeah, okay, over here.
This is more function of a hybrid and remote work. So I have not seen a crisis, but what I've seen is there's a tendency to have high degree of trust with people in person who are always being there versus people who are remote.
Okay.
That is my thing.
Yeah, so differences in the way people are being treated within organizations. Yeah, okay, great. Over there.
So I feel it also depends on the kind of org that you're in. So for example, I'm in the payments org, so by default, there is an extra weightage on trust. Like in the sense that a person that they are onboarding new, they wouldn't obviously trust them with some highly critical project. I mean, I'm sure that's the case with any company, but I think the nature of the org also plays
Yeah.
a part in sort of.
And I think what you're talking to there is some of the things that are happening in the external environment and how they're impacting on the increased
It's-
changes that organizations.
Yeah,
dealing with.
where I'm coming from is I think they value tenure and credibility building over time
Yeah,
rather than just giving.
brilliant. Okay, I'm going to go over this side of the room because we've asked it. And then this will have to be the last one for now. But however, let's hold those thoughts because we are giving you a platform after this to focus up. But let's have one up from over here. Go on ahead.
Yeah, I think it was where we were discussing the same thing. One of the things I noticed is the OpEx, when the companies start optimizing the OpEx, that's a kind of sign where you have to be careful because the flat growth is flat and then that's the only way they can, give the value to the stock
Yeah.
shareholders.
Yeah, okay, right, okay, good. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about, and as I said, we're going to give you a bit of a platform afterwards to keep this conversation going, because we can't justify this topic in 20 minutes. There's absolutely no way. So, and it sounds like it's a topic that's passionate to you. So what we're basically saying is that trust has such an impact on the organization in terms of its ability to continue to perform and do the things that it ends up with issues like, making changes in organizations because the bottom line is being affected. So we're going to share some of Paul Zach's research because it's really, really interesting information about trust. But what we're really going to focus on is why are we talking about this and why does it matter? So I want to share some statistics with you. So this is Gallup's survey. This is a US-based survey. This is the only place they do this particular survey. But they've been measuring employee trust in organizations for a long time. And what they're seeing here is, as you can see, and this is a very scaled graph, right? So whilst it might look like that's a significant increase, we're talking about 23% of the workforce trust their leaders, right? 23%. And we had a real blip in post-pandemic era. It started to go down during the pandemic, and then it really dipped in 2022. And for those of you in the US, you probably can understand why that happened, like in 2022, what was actually driving that downfall in trust in 2022. And then we're also seeing from the Deloitte study that only 16% of workers report high trust in their employers. That's a really terrifying statistic. If I'm talking about the feelings I have when we were, reflecting on the conversation we had with Carol Robin yesterday, this is really terrifying information that so few people feel a sense of trust in their organization. And the reason why that matters? Because trust has a direct impact on employee engagement. Look at this statistic. The majority of the workforce are thinking about quitting, right? 77% of the workforce are thinking about or actively looking to leave their organization. 23%, that same number, are actively thriving in their workforce. That's a scary statistic. And this is a report, this is a global workforce. There are pockets, and we'll share this research after this session, but there are pockets in the world that are doing slightly better, but overall, the average across the world is 23% of people are thriving in their workforce. Now, you can sit amongst yourselves and think about, do you fit into one of those categories? Like, which one do you fit in? Quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is people who are, this is like nearly 60% of the workforce are doing their role, minimum effort, just collecting a paycheck, doing what they want to do and just seeing it through. 18% are actively disengaged from their organization and actually doing things that are actually harmful to the organization. So we'll give you all of the information that comes from here as well after this session. Make sure I know what I'm doing next. So we're talking about this, that trust has a direct impact on employee engagement, which is why we care about it. So trust is no longer a nice to have. You know, it's something that we actually have to pay attention to. It's not a new topic, right? It's been talked about for a long, long time, and you'll see some of the older research that we're seeing here. But even like, it has a direct impact on how you attract people to the organization. How do you make sure you get the right people into the organization so that you can be successful? And again, we're coming back to Paul Zach's amazing research on the neuroscience of trust and the chemicals that are exchanged in your, when you're working with someone, when you have a trust relationship with someone, there's a chemical exchange. And that's because trust is reciprocated. So these 8 behaviors are what Paul Zach has recognized as being the behaviors that contribute most to creating trust. So I'll give you a moment to have a read of those if I'm not in the way. And not that I'm in the way, because look, seriously, my head only comes up. Great. Welcome to the short of it. So have a look at those measures and behaviors and see whether these are behaviors that you yourself as a leader and the leaders that you see around you exhibit. These are the things that they say contribute to trust.
Can you define challenge stress?
Yeah, so that would be good stress. You know, like, so the job is challenging. It's actually stretching you, actually drawing on your strengths. So I see that as, you know, I'm a strengths coach. So I see that as when people are actually being really tested and they're able to thrive, you know, they're put in positions where their best self is able to come to work and that they're given situations where the work is challenging. Does that help? Yeah. Any other questions on this slide?
Increase the trust, like challenging somebody to stretch themselves. Why would that increase the trust?
Let me ask you a question then. If somebody asked you to do something that was a little bit, you know, like challenging for you, would feel really good about doing, would you feel that they trust you?
I would feel good about it.
Yeah. But would you feel that the person who's asked you to do that has confidence in you and believes in you and is actually prepared to take that risk with you? Yeah, that's the I can't even say it, reciprocity of that trust. I had it all down pat last night. Reciprocity. Okay. I'm gonna hand over. Oh, sorry, we've got another question over here.
So in the slide before this, you asked us to introspect into which bucket we all lie.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a bit in each of these. So like I'm highly engaged in some projects that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And it also depends on, you know, what's going on in my personal life and my the other responsibilities. Yeah. So how do we balance out our contribution in each of these buckets or try to focus more on thriving at work?
Yeah, great question, because that's really about self-awareness, right? Which is absolutely critical to trust, right? Which is an aspect of what we're going to talk about. And Andrew's going to talk a bit more about how you think about that. But it's a really good question because it talks a little bit to these aspects, right? So if you look at enabled job crafting, it's like, how do you make sure that the role allows you to do more of those things that make you thrive, and you can actually manage the bits that you go, I just have these other bits and pieces I have to do that don't necessarily fulfill me, but the balance is right. Yeah, so it's like looking at that. So starting to become a bit more curious about what makes me happy in my work and what makes me feel fulfilled so that I would stay in the organization, and what would be, where would the balance be? Am I tipping towards one towards the other? Okay, I'm going to hand over to Ange because we're running.
Yeah.
Running tight.
Thanks, Allie. And I think, you know, as Allie mentioned before, we're just starting to unpack, like there's a lot of data out there. Like we could go on for 20 minutes on data and share all the evidence that's coming through the world actually around how trust is becoming a critical issue and how it's being addressed. And so what we want to make sure we do here together is start to think about, well, how do we look at trust in our working environment, and how do we start to think about that? How can you start to take away some ideas of how you can do that and start to continue to build trust when you leave this fantastic event. So we're going to introduce you to a tool, a concept that's come through. I don't know if anyone has heard about the trust equation. If you have, pop your hand up. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So the trust equation, brilliant. It was developed by two individuals, Charles Green and Andrea Howe. In fact, they both have come out of corporate careers. Andrea Howe had 20 odd years in working in IT tech firms, and they actually could see that this was a really big issue coming through the workplace. And so they've created a business called Trusted Advisor, really interesting business, interesting website, and they capture a lot of data and they bring that into it. They have created an analytical model which they look at the components of trustworthiness. So when we look at trust, we look at trustworthiness in ourselves and then how we start to bring that into play. And this helps provide a starting point for assessing and helping to improve our trustworthiness from a self-reflection perspective. So how are we thinking it from how do we see ourselves as trustworthy? And then of course, how do we start to encourage that in the dynamics of our team and our organizations? And the trust equation is built from what it basically is an equation. It is trustworthiness equals the sum of credibility, reliability, intimacy, divided by self-orientation. So for those mathematical minds in this room, you might quite like this. Yeah, this makes a bit of sense, getting it. But you also might be trying to understand, what does this all mean? I want to ask a question. When you're looking at this equation, someone feel brave enough to be able to pull out what might be, out of the trust equation, what's the biggest impact on how trustworthiness is perceived to be? Which would be it? Oh, great.
Credibility.
Self-orientation.
Self-orientation.
Mathematician.
And just to kind of sum that up, thank you. So self-orientation. So to increase trustworthiness, we need to increase our credibility, reliability, and intimacy, and we need to decrease our self-orientation coming into it. And when we talk about self-orientation, we're talking about things that more matter to me. I want to do this job. I'm actually not going to share anything with you because I selfishly want to get all the credits. I'm going to take that as my self-orientation. That's a really extreme example, but that's an example that you can see play out in organizations. So when we break this down a little bit more, and I'm going to build this out pretty quickly for you all, and again, we'll have this available for you at the end. When we look at credibility, it means more than having good credentials. It's about the words that you use. How are you generally coming across in your conversations with your team, your peers, generally across the organization? And a lot of credibility is wrapped around honesty. Like, how honest are you when you're using your words? Are you saying things and people just going, oh, I don't actually believe what you're saying, and I'm actually not going to listen to that, and I'm going to go over here to get that information, or I'm going to go over here to get another opinion. So that's where credibility comes into it. When we look at intimacy, this word can be uncomfortable in a business context because we don't use intimacy in business language so much. But this is more around how safe do you feel? How safe do people feel around you in sharing information? Do you have team members being able to come to you and feel safe that what they're going to share with you is going to be welcomed with curiosity, with openness, and maybe wrapped around with some lovely feelings like Carol taught us yesterday in her connection session? So that's where intimacy comes in. Reliability is talking about the actions. So we're now combining, like, with your reliability, are you actually going to follow through and do those actions that you need to? This could be skills-based. It can lean into your skills as well when you look at reliability. So people might come to you specifically because they know you are going to be very good at doing something. But it's also, how are you following through on actions and actually just being reliable in that trust relationship? And when we think about self-orientation, we think about self-orientation as a significant opportunity for improvement. So we're looking at, it sits deliberately in the denominator position because what we're trying to do is decrease the self-orientation where how much are you focused on yourself versus how much you're focused on others? And it's balancing that between your credibility, intimacy, and reliability. So just a note to wrap this all up, to improve your self-orientation, you need to lower it rather than increase it, right? So you want to increase your credibility, intimacy, reliability. You want to look at lowering your self-orientation to get that through. I really covered that super quick. We can train this for 25 minutes plus. So I'm gonna hope that it's giving you a bit of connection. I want you to have 30 seconds, a bit of self-reflection. It's to help you take this beyond this room and keep reflecting more. In your current roles, in your current job, which component do you feel you may be stronger in when you look at these components? Which one do you feel? Self-assess and be critical. You're only talking to yourself at the moment. Where do you feel you might be stronger in, and which component do you feel you could improve? 30 seconds, quick reflection, and capture it for yourself. Thank you. Oh, hi.
When we think of these four parameters, right? I feel like it sometimes varies within person to person, depending on the person perceiving us. How do you evaluate that?
Great question. So when they talk about this equation, they talk about a good dose of balance between all the elements. So really thinking about how you leverage into it and bring it into play. It would be worth asking yourself that question as well in those relationships. Like, why are you dialing it up in certain areas with certain relationships versus not with others? And I think that's something that you can then start to self-reflect and move on. But it's a really good one to think about. I'm going to move us on because I'm conscious of time.
Great.
Thank you.
So some of you would have seen this model in Foundations of Leadership, in other courses within LEAD, but this is just really to bring you back to some practical steps that you can take as a leader to increase trust within your organization. So there's another, as you've seen, there's a lot of material on this, and we're going to share a lot more of that. What I wanted to draw here is bring us back to something that Ange talked about at the beginning of the session, which is the change that Ange's org has just been through. Significant change. It's had a lot of trust in it. Well, there's a method in the madness of us both talking here around trust, because I helped Ange work on that change in an org development capacity. A lot of what I had to do was address and understand some of the issues with trust within the organization to enable Ange to lead that change. And so it was building trust, like understanding everywhere in the organization what needed to be in place in order for that change to be successful. So there is a reason why we're here, not just because we're both living in Australia and we like the long and short of it as a thing. And it starts with you, right? So there's a reason why we focus on trustworthiness. It's about how you start this process. So we really need to start to think about how much do you even trust yourself? Like there's some really great questions coming out from people about self-reflection. So we really want you to put the emphasis here on a bit of self-awareness and actually have you thinking about how trust is driven by the way you are and how you understand that trust relationship yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. So we're wrapping up and we got some great little takeaways here. Our final thoughts, we've really done this in what we hope is a succinct way. We're just kind of dangling some seeds and sowing some materials together around the concept of trust and how you can consider that. But some final thoughts for you to take away. Linking self-awareness to trust is super important. And actually, I talked about the Trusted Advisor. They've got an awesome free self-assessment on how trusting are you against the trust equation. So I encourage that you all do that. If you like it, it kind of actually calls out for you. Where is your strength area and where could be an area you want to focus on developing a bit more? I did mine. My development area was intimacy. Wasn't surprised about that actually, because I'm not so comfortable sharing my feelings in the workplace. I kind of get the manager, I need to show the team that everything's good, everything's strong, we're all like follow my pathway. And actually sometimes I'm not that vulnerable in my intimacy coming through. So really great concept. They leverage the tools that you're learning in Lead. Allie's mentioned a couple of courses, a lot of the courses that you can start to think about how you can leverage trust concepts into the content that we're learning at Lead is super important. Power of Lead, storytelling, and intentional leadership are some examples, but there's many out there across our curriculum. Take a collaborative approach to relationships. So what I'm saying about that is actually thinking about how you can make a relationship really rewarding for not just yourself, but for that other person, and how you approach that in a business concept and how you start to think about that even more. Starting to take that approach and starting to think about, okay, what am I trying to do with that person, that relationship? You just shared like your different ways that you'll have dynamics with is a really good way to go. Well, what is that person also wanting to achieve from this relationship with me as well? And then make transparency a habit. I think as trust starts to diminish, and we see this politically, we see this economically, we see this globally, what happens is we don't get all the information. We sometimes just get the skimming surface of what we're believed to know or we need to know. But actually being transparent and being more open about sharing, what are you feeling? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why am I asking you to do that piece of work for me? Because actually, you know what? I don't know how to do it, but I know you've got a skill to do it. So I really want you to help me with that. Is really great examples to kind of really move forward and help build your own awareness of self-trust and then encourage that within your teams.
And to wrap it up, as we can only just start this topic, right? We can make a dent in that 23% issue, increase it, increase trust in the organization. It all starts with us. So we've decided that we're going to start a Lead trust movement, right? Everyone in this group is going to be the start of this journey to help us try and make this shift, to make work a better place to be, to make leaders better in their role as trusting leaders. So we've created a workplace group to continue this conversation. It is called Trust, a Lead Movement. We want you to join that group. We want you to start to share your stories of trust. We will start sharing some of the data that we've got. We'll make links to all the reports that we've shared with you today. We just want to keep this energy going of people who want to make a big dent in that problem and actually have us change lives, change organizations, and change the world. So with that. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I think we're now right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.